Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday in the Park with George reflection panel, Art Isn't Easy. My name is Kathryn Marsh, and I'm going to be moderating the experience today. And today we're just going to be talking to some of the company about how the show came to be in a time where theater is so difficult to put on and to perform and to be able to watch. So we're going to start, and we're going to welcome in our guests, starting with Jay Berkow, the director. Hi, Jay. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for
All
having
right.
us.
Next is going to be Marcus Jackson, who played one of the Georges. Hello, welcome. All right. And next we're going to have Allison Taylor, who played one of the Dots.
Hi.
All right. Hello. And adding in Kathryn Wagner next, who was design and costumes. Hi, Kathryn. Okay. And then we are also going to add in Camryn Rodgers, who was set design.
Hello.
Hi. And finally, Michael Bruno, who was the head stage manager.
Hey, how's it going?
Right. Pretty good. How are you?
Good.
All right. So this is everybody. Welcome, all of you guys. We're so excited to have you here. And I'm sure everybody watching is eager to hear about this amazing journey and how you guys had this come to be. So we're going to start by asking Jay the first question. Jay, can you describe to us the events that led up to the show being canceled back in March and what that was like not getting to the chance to do the show at the time?
Well, at Western, we have auditions for each season or each semester, the semester prior. So auditions for Sunday in the Park with George happened in October of 2019. And we cast the show. And at the time, we thought art isn't easy, but we didn't realize how not easy it was going to become.
Yeah.
We started a kind of normal rehearsal process. The way I rehearse a show, I tend to kind of do all the externals quickly. So we block the show very quickly. And one of the things that was interesting about this particular production, because we double cast the leads, George and Dot, I thought it was very important that George, the two Georges and the two Dots really didn't watch each other's rehearsal process, and so that they could kind of the characters could evolve separately. And we were moving right along, and as with many of the musicals at Western, it was more or less ready about 2 weeks before we were supposed to open. And most of the seniors and I just came back from New York City where we were having a showcase. And that's when the blossom of COVID occurred in New York and everything started shutting down in New York and then moving across the country. And to be honest, we really, the beginning of the COVID crisis kind of came, it just snuck up on everyone. It didn't just kind of just, oh, by the way, everything's closing down. And then that's kind of what happened. We closed down the production before the university actually shut down, and it was very emotional. This is a show that evokes a lot of passion in the performers and the designers and everyone that works on the show. It's really a show about making art and finding connection and being a human being and finding that balance between saying something important with your art and still living a full life as a person. And I think that's something that every artist, including all of the people on the panel tonight, have to struggle with on a daily basis. And so it was something that we really were very passionate about. Plus, it's a hard show. It's Sondheim. It is difficult. You don't just like whip out your script and sing it. So it took a lot of work. So it was very, very disappointing to a number of the cast members, to myself, to Kathryn. I'll let Kathryn talk about kind of how extensive the work on the costumes on this show was, and how I was as close to broken as I've seen Kathryn. And then Marcus, the original Dot that Marcus was paired with was a woman named Emma Weinman, who was a senior who graduated. Originally, Allie was playing one of the other roles in the show. And so it literally just kind of ended very abruptly. Like one day we had a run through and I was like, Marcus and Emma, you should put your heart into this because this may be the only time you run the show. And so they had this rehearsal where we just kind of ran it, even though it was not supposed to be a run through. It was supposed to be kind of a stop and start work through. I said, no, we're just going to run it because as it turns out, that was the last time we ran the show. And then production shut down and then the university shut down and we were all online. And that's how it went down.
Yeah, wow. I can imagine that creeping up on you guys so quickly must have been so just awful. as was for everybody in the theater world. So going from there, you recasted, you had to cancel and work on things. What went into the decision-making process to resurrect the show, to start it up again? Because I know that was probably...
Well, for one thing, Sunday in the Park with George is one of my favorite musicals. It's something I've been very passionate about for many, many years. And I've never directed a production of Sunday in the Park with George, even though I've directed like everything else Sondheim wrote. But for some reason, I never had the opportunity. This was always kind of my passion piece. And Kathryn and I felt very similarly about the show. She spent I don't know how many hours staring at the painting in Chicago. And so when it went down and we were kind of talking about what we could potentially do in the fall, and I started throwing around the idea of doing outdoor, socially distanced, masked theater. And originally we were talking about continuing the season that we had originally planned and not doing Sunday in the Park with George. We were originally planning to do 2 musicals this fall, Carrie and Something Rotten, which were cast before COVID shut us down. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized Sunday in the Park would be a much better option for doing something outdoors, something that kind of has a beauty and a message to it that really would be important right now. Plus, in terms of throwing something together relatively quickly, we had most of the costumes. We had most of the actors knew the show, but we had to do some cast replacements. Obviously, Emma was no longer with us, and I made a phone call to Allie, and was it in July?
Yeah, end of July.
Offering her the role to play opposite Marcus. And it was frankly, it was a little terrifying because I was like, I'm offering you this role. I know you'd be brilliant, but I can't guarantee we'll actually ever perform the show. And it's a giant role. It's a huge role for her to take on, particularly under the circumstances where she never knew if she'd actually perform it. And that was a risk that all of us took from the very beginning. We didn't know if the university would still be open. We didn't know if this grand experiment of doing outdoor theater, which really took the time and talent of everyone involved. I'd love to say it was just kind of my force of will that magically made it happen. And perhaps some of it was just because I was a bulldog, but a lot of it had to do with Cheryl Brewy and Joan Harrington and Kathryn and all of the designers and Pat Nemi and Brian, everyone who worked on this show who kind of put it all together, and Jen Rock, who magically kind of created a theater out of basically the front steps of the Richmond Center. And that wasn't even the original place we thought about doing it. There's an amphitheater over on campus that we thought about using. We thought about doing it in a parking lot. And I'm very, very glad we arrived at the Richmond Center. It was kind of a magical space. It was beautiful. And we also owe a lot to Dave Clemens, who is our sound designer and sound engineer, who's on furlough from Miller Auditorium. And the very first day of this is a show with, I don't know, thousands of lyrics that are it's really important for the audience to understand the words. And the first tech rehearsal, we could understand every single word, even with masks on. It was like, oh my God, my dreams have come true. I can hear it.
That is so wonderful. Still on this question really quick, I wanted to ask, was there like was there a lot of support to start up and do the show again? Or was there a lot of like disagreements on it? Was there like backlash between people? Because I feel like it was a hard
backlash. There were definitely people that were concerned about safety and safety protocols, and that we really addressed very intensely with this show. We found 3 different safety protocols. One, obviously, that's provided by the CDC, which is what the university is more or less following. Then there's another one that we utilize, which is by Actors Equity, which is the union for professional actors. And then I found a third protocol for outdoor performance spaces currently being used in Boston. And I kind of took all of those and put them together, and we came up with a very, very stringent protocol. And even though the cast couldn't truly be quarantined because they were students taking classes, everyone in the production signed basically a contract that said that they are more or less quarantining themselves. That outside of rehearsal, they are masked, they are distant, they are not going to restaurants. It was very, very stringent, and we had to enforce it. We had to ensure that everyone in the company felt safe. We found these masks that we used specifically for the show that that allowed some visual of the face while still really protecting the cast. And Emily Duguay was instrumental in really designing how the audience could come and enjoy the show safely by creating audience pods so that you could come to the show with a group of your friends, sit in a protected pod, but you were distant from the rest of the audience. Everyone brought their own chairs. And it actually was really, really beautiful. And the audience, I think, felt very safe, felt we were following protocols beautifully. And we had to, I'll let Kathryn jump in and Michael jump in because we had so many backstage protocols that had to be put into effect to make sure that the cast was safe too.
Yeah, could you guys elaborate on just a couple of those backstage protocols? You kind of already went into the third question I was going to ask you, Jay, which was the obstacles you had to go about to bring this show safely to Manor. So would either of you, Kathryn or Michael, like to elaborate on like the backstage protocols? Because I feel like I'm curious about that.
I can talk a little bit about the costume setup. The actors did get dressed over in the Gilmore dressing rooms, where they were all four or five at the most in each dressing room, so pretty spaced out. There's plastic hanging between each costume, so that one person's costume doesn't touch another. And then their quick change clothes for the rest of the show were stored over in the Richmond Center. And again, those were all hung on racks with plastic in between. Wardrobe pretty much sprayed any alcohol on anything that anybody touched or went near. In terms of the costumes themselves, nobody shared costumes for the most part. The Georges all had their own costumes. And the only really shared pieces were the dot skirts, for the most part, were shared. They had their own top halves, but the bottom shared. And then we're just sprayed down in between each performance with alcohol and then let to dry. So that's pretty much what we did. Fitting-wise, we did everything like we normally do, except with a lot of plastic around us and a lot of like gear on our faces, and a lot of hand washing and hand sanitizing. So other than that, we were pretty much functioning as normal. So.
Gotcha. That sounds pretty elaborate, but also very safe. I would ask Bruno for what there was like specifically backstage without the costumes. Like, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for us, the stage management team was in charge of keeping everything clean and sanitized throughout the run. Other things we did, having George and Dot double casted, they had their own separate prop boxes that were just their props, and so there was no contamination between people playing the same part. There's a red book that comes up in the show, and Allie's character has it, and then Marcus's character has it. So we had 4 of those floating around for our shows, and there was a lot of, like Kathryn mentioned, a lot of spraying alcohol all over the place, a lot of disinfectant wipes, and then a lot of hand sanitizer and a lot of hand washing. But that was about it.
We took every actor's temperature at every rehearsal and check in.
No, I was good. It sounds about as I know everyone who saw the show generally that I talked to felt really safe. It sounds like it was very similar in the backstage aspect, which is really good. All right, so now we're going to move on to asking our actors some questions. Again, feel free to chime in if you want, but these are specifically for Marcus and Allie. So the first question we have for you guys is, what is the significance of getting to still perform the show in a COVID-19 world? And anything
Specifically, I like going into the summer after being canceled, after everything being shut down. I don't know. Jay can attest to me feeling pretty defeated. I was pretty down and out about everything, and it's indescribable the magic that has been felt the past 3 weeks, and hopefully communicated the past 3 weeks. I haven't felt like the rush that I got these last 3 weeks in so long, and I don't know. After being canceled, I didn't think I ever would again, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure Allie can also attest to that.
Yeah, I think coming from a time of quarantine, that need for human connection was just so strong between all of the cast members, and I'm sure a lot of the audiences. So just being able to gather together and put on the show, even though we're distanced and wearing masks and we're not allowed to touch each other, just still being present with each other and creating something in a time of uncertainty and fear and depression. I think it was just really, really special and humbling to be able to get together and put on the show.
That is so wonderful. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, kind of going off of that for you two, the second question I have for you guys were, what challenges did you have to face as a performer? And I know I was curious about this specifically watching the show. What was the experience singing through the plastic mask? Because that looked difficult. It looked like you had to adjust it all the time. And
Go ahead, Ellie.
All right. I think the biggest issue, well, at first, you kind of learned to work around it, was just keeping the 6 feet of distance between us, especially when we're doing these really intense romantic scenes between George and Dot, just having to find other ways to express your love for your partner in the scene, because you can't touch each other, you can't get close to each other even. So I think the best thing about these plastic masks is, even though they were in the way, just being able to see a smile, or just being able to see the half of your scene partner's face, it really did make a huge difference, because we all had our kind of own individual cloth masks at the start. And I just remember the first day we switched over to the plastic masks, and so much of the show was changed and more connected because I could just smile at Marcus in certain scenes when we can't touch or we can't get close to each other.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Do you have anything to add to that, Marcus, or did you say it?
Yeah, I mean, specifically with the singing, you can ask my voice teachers. I rely a lot on opening my mouth a ton to create a lot of sound. And I just, like, first day putting on that plastic mask, you can't do that. And so just adjusting vowel sounds and adjusting, those types of things to get these really difficult, songs out. I mean, Dot has these crazy songs in this show that would be a challenge for any actress, and George has the same. And so in addition to struggling with that, you also had to put the masks on top of it, and I don't know, we got past it.
Yeah. Wow. I never even thought about like being able to just see that part of someone's face, or how it would affect you like vocally singing like that, because that definitely probably was difficult. Oh my goodness. Okay.
It also
well,
really affected the outdoor theater, and the changes in temperature really affected those masks. So more than a cloth mask, which just kind of just absorbs your breath and the moisture that comes out of your mouth and your nose. But when you're wearing a plastic mask and it gets cold outside, all that moisture congeals, on that mask, and there's just like this sheen of wet in there. It's not really. It doesn't fall. They didn't fog up, which was magical. Like oh, but sometimes it was like a river. You would see Marcus, and he was just kind of like.
oh my gosh. Well, that's good that you guys were able to put that in the
share that TMI.
No, I remember watching it and thinking, man, like I didn't see them fogging up at all, and I thought that was like, I wonder how they must feel on. Probably not great, but that's good that they didn't fog up at all. All right, I'm gonna move on to the third question for you guys. This one also, I would like for any of you guys to feel free to chime in, because it's a bit of a broader question. So I think, but for you two specifically, how has COVID changed your perspective on the theater industry? Which is a big one.
Well, being a senior this year, I've gone through my 4 years thinking, I'm so pumped to, move to New York or move to Chicago and get my career started. Well, it's definitely put a hold on all of those plans, and really made me consider higher education, which is, a big change for me specifically. I know a lot of people go into college thinking, oh, I'm going to go get my master's, but I did not. And I think that it really has provided me the perfect time to, maybe pursue that, maybe really think about something like that.
Yeah.
Someone has to do this job in 10 years,
Yeah.
Yeah. Any of you other guys want to comment on how it has changed your perspective just on the industry overall?
Yeah, coming into this show, one of the biggest things that I just had to realize was just not taking anything for granted. We had this one rehearsal. It was just me, Marcus, and Jay, and he said, this could very well be the last time that we do this. We do these scenes, we do these songs, so just enjoy it. And I know Marcus and I talked, but we really kind of had to adopt that mindset going into this show when at any given notice the show could be canceled. And so just really enjoying and cherishing every minute that you have with these characters, with these people, it really is special.
Yeah, speaking to that, I remember that conversation Allie and I had, and it was like every rehearsal, like she said, was like, oh, this may be the last time. And it's so funny that, 3 weeks later, enough last times later, we actually did it.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. You can see the comment on the screen, which I also.
That's my dad.
Oh, that's wonderful. I also, just being able to see that performance, like being able to see a live performance, I think for a lot of the audience was just very like something to see. It was different and it did bring back a little bit of normalcy. Nothing better than put the world behind for a moment and walk through the park with friends. Oh,
yeah, thanks,
Love
Joel.
you, Eathan.
That's so nice. Do any of you guys, anyone else want to comment on that question? If not, we can move on. It's just a big, broad question. The theater industry is constantly changing, but this is just, I know this pandemic has affected it quite a lot, obviously.
I say this a lot. I guess I'm like Maria in that regard, but theater has been around for literally thousands of years, and a pandemic is not going to end live theater. It's not going to end our need to form a community to come together to enjoy an emotional experience and be taken on stories. It's not like the reason live theater, this ancient form of art, is still around, as opposed to movies and television and online experiences, is because people need that connection and want to have that kind of live storytelling back and forth. And it goes all the way from having theater that is very political and theater that is very much in the moment and about what's happening, and theater that is telling stories that take us away and give us a moment of levity that pulls us away from the world that we're in. And I think that's kind of what's really important. Now, how we are able to deliver it in the next 2 to 3 years will be the challenge, and I think we're going to have more and more creative experiences where people. And I've been contacted by people all over the country because somehow this got picked up on like Broadway.com, and I've had phone calls from California and from Florida, people just asking how we did it because it looked so safe. And now I'm like, oh, let's just change the weather pattern so we can warm up Kalamazoo a little bit in the winter and do more outdoor.
No, yeah, that would be great. That's so wonderful that a lot of people have been contacting you about what you guys have done here. That is really cool. And I've never even thought about how a theater has been around for so long. So the industry will keep going no matter what, even because of this. And with that, I think we're going to move on to asking the design and tech questions. But again, all of you feel free to comment. So these are mainly for Camryn and Kathryn, but also Bruno, if you want to add in. I have questions specifically for the stage manager, but all three of you can comment. So the first question for all you guys is, how did you adjust to the requirements of producing theater in a COVID world when it came to lighting, sound, and the set and costumes? And what remained from the original plans from April? Did you have to just scrap everything or a lot, or?
Well, our original show was very projections based. So it depended on a dark indoor theater with lots of, electricity not outside the Richmond Center. So we had to basically scrap every, at least scenic element from the previous show. So we just went with what was feasible in the time frame and what we could do safely also. Obviously, actors and patrons can't be more than or closer than 6 feet apart, and we can't in the shop either. So having people in the shop to build a show it's hard in this new world where we have to clean everything that everybody touches and not be within 6 feet of people. So yeah, it was a big adjustment to make the show work.
Yeah, wow. I'm sure that was. Say anything else you want to add, Kathryn?
Yeah, so costume-wise, we didn't change a lot. Jay mentioned that the show was cast before Christmas in October. He and I were working on it long before that. I've been working on this show forever. It'll never go away as far as I'm concerned. It's always going to be there for me. When the show closed, the costume shop manager, Kate McKenzie, she and I agreed. We'd already painted a couple of the costume pieces, and we were going to finish those costumes and we were going to paint them. And we didn't know what we would do with them someday, but we were going to finish them regardless. So that's what we set about doing, regardless of what happened to the show. And when it popped back up in the season, could we do this? The answer was yes, because we have continued to work on it, and we'll just keep going. I will say day to day, just like in their rehearsals, they didn't know if that was the last time they were going to rehearse that piece. We didn't know from day to day whether we were going to need those costumes after that day or not. So we just came in every day and just kept working on them. We did eliminate some changes that were in the first act originally, not for Dot, but there were some changes originally planned for Yvonne and Jules that we eliminated to just cut down on the activity backstage of people having to change their clothes. The change from the period to the modern and back, we had to leave that in place because you can't do the show without that quick change setup. But other than that, we proceeded to do what we set out to do with them, the way I designed them. And although the painting looks a little bit strange with everyone 6 feet apart, we did last week, we had all of the cast come in one at a time, and we took photographs of them in the various costumes that were painted. And the plan is to take all of those photographs and actually place them into the blank painting background that Camryn originally had in her design, and actually put the actors' photos in there so that actors can have a copy of themselves in the painting, as well as trying to put the whole painting back together with all the actors in the right place. So that's what we're hoping to do with them next. And then now the costumes will just get cleaned, and then they'll just go hang in storage on a rack, and that's where they'll stay. So.
Wow, that sounds wonderful about the painting, and I'm sure everybody, not a part of the company or cast, would love to see that because of it being 6 feet apart. I remember seeing it and not thinking it looked very weird at all, but just obviously it was different than what you guys originally planned. All right, well, I'm going to move on to the next question for you guys. So that is going to be, what were some of the biggest challenges you had to face while producing this new version of the show? You kind of went over that just in this first question, but anything else you wanted to add, specific challenges for you guys?
I would say safety was still one of the biggest ones, because usually in a theater department, you're working as fast as you can to get as much as you can, and that involves getting a lot of people for like a paint call or for building a piece of the set. And obviously we could not do that this time around. So learning to work in the parameters that COVID has put us in was probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
At least this year.
Yeah, I think, go ahead.
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Okay, I think the costume shop was the same way. We're only allowed supposedly six people up there, although we do have occasionally a seventh or eighth person up there, but that would include the actor who was up there for a costume fitting. So it really limited how many people could be up there. We were painting the costumes in a craft room that's just off the costume shop that's technically only allowed to have one person in it. But sometimes Amelia Patmore, who did a lot of the painting on the costumes that were not done until this fall, she and I were in there painting together, or we would take turns. I would come in when she was in class, and then I would leave and she would go in there. But The only other change we really had to make was the space in between fittings. Normally an actor comes up and they're waiting for the previous fitting to finish so that they're ready to go into their costume fitting. And we had to leave some time in between so that we could spray down the dressing room for the fittings and get that clothing secured away before we put the next actor's clothing in the fitting room for them. So that changed those protocols a bit. But in terms of the actual fitting, you guys can speak to this a little bit. Kate and I did what we normally do. It's hard to be hands off with an actor when you're trying to fit a costume. We were right in there pinning things, reminding each other to put on the safety goggles or a mask or, whatever, a face shield. It was very hard to remember to put the face shield or the glasses on, but we all came out healthy in the end. And so I feel like we were being as safe as possible. So,
yeah.
No, we also had to learn to expect the unexpected. And, Michael Bruno and I have very similar personalities in that neither one of us is particularly hot-headed. We both kind of always stay calm and try to come up with a solution that makes sense. But I don't think I've ever heard him yell, and I know he's never heard me yell because I don't do it. But like wind, we didn't anticipate wind, and the wind became a big issue with us. Right from the first rehearsal, our music director, his score is blowing all over the place, and we ended up using a Cuties box from the grocery store. That was our high-tech solution for that. The first rehearsal, there's a two-dimensional dog that's very important in the show named Spot. His very first rehearsal, Camryn, he blew over and broke his tail off. So we just, you're like, okay, there's going to be things that we're not expected.
Yeah, no, those unexpected things must have been really difficult, but it's really good to know that you guys were able to practice that safety even behind the scenes. But I can imagine the wind was a big issue that was not planned for. All right, now we're going to move on and ask Bruno the questions for the stage manager. You can see that comment right there. Super proud of your resiliency, positivity, and creativity amid this pandemic. That is nice. All right, so the first question I have for you, Bruno, is could you describe to us the load in and load out process for the show every night? And where did you have to store equipment? Or I know how long did it take? Because I'm sure it was a lot.
Sure. Myself and Jason Washburn, the technical director for the show, as well as a crew of 15 other technicians, would get there 4 hours before curtain, and we would all push over all of our gear that we had stored in we were storing it in a section of Miller Auditorium that wasn't being used. So we were just kind of taking advantage of that. It was a little closer for us, and we used that to our advantage. The whole load-in process takes us about 2 hours. If you look at a picture of the stage, the only thing that stayed there every night was that ground row along the back there that Cam designed and painted. But everything else, everything that you can see in this picture that we're all sitting and working at, and then all of the lighting equipment and the band that's over in the corner there, that was all struck and set up every day. Set up in, an hour, 2 hours, and gone in 45 minutes.
Wow. That is a lot to have to do that every single day. All right, I'm going to have the next question for you and the final question for you, and then we'll have a big, broad question for all of you to answer is, how was this experience different for you as a stage manager? And did you assist in enforcing COVID-related safety protocol, which you mentioned earlier that you did? And I believe you said are you a senior because you stage managed before? How is this different than those before?
So last semester when we did this show, I was one of the assistant stage managers on it, and Josh, our stage manager, graduated. So when we remounted this, I took over. So it was kind of weird being thrust up into his job all of a sudden and very quickly to get the show on the road per se. But it was really strange not being able to, Jay and I have worked together for several shows now, and if we have to, talk about something privately or something, we'll go walk away and go into our little huddle and talk about something, but now it was, respectfully walk up to him 6 feet away. Hi, Jay. Can we chat about something? We tried not to be the safety police as much for the show. We decided that there were some other members of the production who were going to do that, because we feel that keeping people safe and a infection mitigation coordinator is its own separate job. So myself and Emma, my ASM, we did as much as we needed to keep everyone safe, but then there were other people involved in the production actually doing the legwork, you could say, to actually make sure that everything was followed out.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. Thank you for those answers. And now I'm going to open up for one final question for all of you. And that question is going to be, what were some of the benefits of the experience for everyone as a result of producing theater successfully in such unorthodox conditions? I also wanted to add, if you guys have anything you want to say right now that maybe specifically doesn't pertain to this question, but you just wanted to bring up or bring out about the process, now would also be the time to do that. But if any of you want to answer this question or have something to say.
Well, the general answer I would say is that this was a real, every time you do a show, there's always a certain kind of camaraderie and kind of inclusiveness that happens with the company that does the show, and not just the actors and musicians, but everyone that's working on the show, from people that are running the show on a daily basis to the crew that has to set up and check the lights every day. And this show was a real, I think everyone who worked on the show was really passionate about the opportunity to work on a show and do live theater again after all this time. The very first rehearsal, when we all came together on August 24th and we all started singing, and I literally just started bawling. First of all, they sounded good from day one. Second of all, I hadn't heard anyone live singing. I have this beautiful job where people sing to me all day, every day for my career. And if I do my job right, they sing well. And just to not have live singing for 6 months and then come together and to hear those beautiful, beautiful ensemble chords of Sunday, that finale back one, it just I felt like the Grinch. My heart was like, and to see the company's faces, and this was a tricky endeavor, just because we had people that had been part of the show for literally almost a year, and then people that had joined the show 2 weeks before we opened, and to kind of get that same energy and focus out of everyone, and I think that truly happened. And I had so many people in the audience coming up to me, just crying, just thanking us for doing this and for making it happen. And I think that was worth it. That made it all really worth it.
That is
Yeah,
really
I just wanted to add to that I have always, like, I'm always told, it takes an army to put up a show, or all of those different that rhetoric, and I don't think that I've ever seen it in action more than this. I remember going in for one of my fittings and asking Kathryn, is this actually going to happen, or should I get my hopes up? Is this gonna? And she said something to me that really carried me throughout the entire production, is that, whatever happens, we're going to keep working. And that is just stuck with me so much, and giving me the kick that I needed. And I just wanted to add that.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, that is really wonderful. Does anyone else have anything they want to add off of that, or like Kathryn, elaborate when you said that?
I remember that conversation with Marcus, and it was very upsetting, mostly because he and I probably felt the exact same way in the spring when the show was canceled. I didn't see him then, but I know from talking to him after that he and I probably had the exact same reaction. But as I told him, and I tell everybody, I'm just going to keep doing it until somebody tells me to put it away. You can't do that anymore. Sorry. I guess for me, the benefit of doing it was proving that it is possible to do it. And I know I said to Jay after I think it was the final draft, I said, let's do more. What else can we do out here? Let's start doing more theater out here. Why aren't we doing theater out here? COVID or no COVID, why can't we keep doing this? Because there are other ways to make theater, and it doesn't have to be in a building, sitting in a seat. You know,
Yeah.
we can make it happen regardless.
No, that is such a wonderful way to look at it. And honestly, I think that's a pretty solid note to end on. Whatever happens, we're going to keep working. And I think hopefully that's what you all feel like. So that is, I just wanted to thank you all so much for being here and for taking the time to talk about your experience and share what you've learned and everything you had to do for this. And I also wanted to thank everybody watching. I don't know how many people are watching, but thank you all for being here and watching and learning with us. I also wanted to say thank you to all of the donors and patrons who have made supporting WMU theater students during this crazy time. And we all know that like art isn't easy, but it's made easier by having a community like you by our side. So thank you for everybody who is doing that and helping us produce those things. And I want everyone watching, all of you guys, to stay tuned for more virtual content as the winter is coming, and it's going to be, we can't really do outdoor theater, but stay tuned for that. And thank you all so much again, where this is going to be the end, so you can wave goodbye. Thank you all for talking to me.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. We're all good. You guys